Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. Today we've got a kind of sad story involving a well-known Star Wars author and recent controversy involving how Disney has treated him. So, a bit of background. Alan Dean Foster is a very well-known science fiction author, and he's also done a lot of genre science fiction, novelizations, movie tie-ins, stuff like that. When it came to Star Wars, Foster created both the original novelization for A New Hope and Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was written, as I'm sure many of you know, as a potential sequel for A New Hope, which would have been much smaller in budget should the first film not have been successful. Of course, both of these books, the novelization and Splinter of the Mind's Eye, are well known among Star Wars fans. They've sold lots of copies, and Alan would also go on to write the novelization for The Force Awakens and another book called The Approaching Storm, which is part of the Legends continuity. Unfortunately, despite playing what some would certainly call a foundational role in creating the Star Wars written universe, Alan Dean Foster has not been treated well as of late. First of all, some sad news. Mr. Foster has what he's described as an advanced and aggressive form of cancer, while his wife is also dealing with some medical issues herself. To be frank, he's probably not able to write at the capacity that he would have been when he was younger. And, this is a big one, Mr. Foster has, for a few years now, not received any royalties from the two Star Wars books he worked on in the 70s, the A New Hope novelization and the Splinter of the Mind's Eye. A lot of this information is coming to us from the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, the SFWA or SFWA, which represents over 10,000 fiction writers and is responsible for the Nebula Awards and more, which I'm sure you've heard of. SFWA has been highlighting the story of Alan Dean Foster in an article that they call #Disney Must Pay, which was written by SFWA's president, Mary Robinette Kowal. First of all, she shares a letter from Mr. Foster where she explains that since Disney purchased Lucasfilm, he has not received royalties on Splinter of the Mind's Eye or Star Wars, and since they purchased 20th Century Fox, they've also not paid him royalties for Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. Despite the fact that all of these books are in print, they still earn money, and to put it frankly, Mr. Foster is in need of funds right now. And this isn't charity either. This is money that he is owed. He wrote those books, and for those of you who don't know what royalties are, basically you're paid per sale. So as those books continue to sell, and funny enough, I actually just bought a new copy of Splinter of the Mind's Eye a couple of months ago, there should be money coming in. So Mr. Foster and his agent gave an interview on the SFWA website, which you guys can check out. I watched the whole thing and I'll summarize some of it. The issue is not only that Mr. Foster hasn't been paid for the better part of the decade, but also that he and his agent are being stonewalled by Disney at every point. It seems like legal is basically stopping the company from giving them any real information. They want to have Mr. Foster under an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement forbidding him to talk about what happened before even discussing anything about the payments that he is owed. And their argument, without any sort of elaboration, is that they acquired the assets of Star Wars, but not the liabilities. Now, it is true, when one corporation buys another, the assets can go to one party and the liabilities can stay elsewhere. However, where Disney kind of just took on Lucasfilm, paid George Lucas out of Star Wars entirely, and there's not really any remaining operations of the company outside of what's in Disney now, I think it's pretty unlikely that this happened. I don't think, for example, that George Lucas personally would be the one responsible for still paying out the royalties for books from the 1970s. And I mention the 70s because this is an important point. It seems like what Disney is doing here, just from my outside interpretation, is relying on the fact that they've got such a size advantage over Mr. Foster. I mean, this is a huge company with the most expensive lawyers on the planet. Alan Dean Foster is a ill writer. He's got very little leverage, and even SFWA is minuscule compared to Disney. Did Disney purchase the rights for the Star Wars brand and not purchase any of the liabilities? Well, clearly no. I mean, that makes no sense. They would have purchased staff and technology and equipment and buildings and things like that. And I just don't see how it wasn't Lucasfilm paying out these royalties. I mean, it may have been the publisher Del Rey, but I don't know, I kind of doubt it. And even if that is the case, Disney is not without blame here. First of all, Alan Dean Foster is owed royalties for a Star Wars book. I think ultimately Disney and Lucasfilm should have an active interest in making sure that he's taken care of. Now, that doesn't mean that they pay for something they don't own. However, if the liability to pay royalties does belong to someone else, then they should open up a line to communication. SFWA says that they've never seen anything like this when it comes to just the outright stopping of royalty payments without any sort of notice or anything like that, but they also lay out that requiring an author to enter an NDA to have a simple discussion about where his royalty payments are coming for and why they've stopped is just completely against industry standards and norms. And during the call, there were actually other people from within and outside Star Wars, including the estate of A.C. Crispin, who wrote the Han Solo trilogy, that this is something that recently Disney and perhaps other mega corporations have done to authors, particularly when it comes to very old works that are still earning money. I mean, Disney apparently is just not responding. Mr. Foster and his agent have hired a lawyer. The lawyer has reached out to Disney, but just nothing. And you can sue Disney, but can you really? It's very risky to just have to pay your own legal fees when you're short on money, much less having to pay any sort of damages if the court goes the other way or legal fees of the opposite side, whatever else. The SFWA does also have an internal grievance system as well. They offer negotiation services, but of course Disney has not taken them up on that. It's sort of meant as an anonymous way to work out issues like this so they don't have to be taken to the public, because this is really an extraordinary situation. But yeah, when you're Disney and you're this big, you can afford to ignore smaller people because, well, why not? SFWA also has a good point, and they say, and I quote, "If they are doing this to Alan Dean Foster, one of the great science fiction writers of our time, then what are they doing to the younger writers who do not know that a contract is a contract?" And this is a good point. Disney is well known, and Star Wars generally has a bad reputation when it comes to how they treat writers. They don't pay them very well. For what I understand, royalties are not common at all within new Star Wars publishing, although that's just what I've heard on the internet and on the street, so to speak. And there's just a lot of bad experience that I've had relayed to me. Even recently, and we've talked about this on the channel, we've seen Ryder Widham, who wrote some of the Ultimate Star Wars books, talk about how they've been essentially republishing his work for 20 years with not any sort of royalties or whatever else. So SFWA puts forward 3 different options that Disney has to resolve this conflict. First of all, they can pay Alan Dean Foster all back royalties as well as any future royalties. And this is a major thing. This isn't just the current sales of the book. This is sales going back perhaps as far as 2012. Second, they can cease publication of the book until new contracts are signed and pay back royalties as well as any future royalties under a new contract, or they can cease publication entirely and still pay back all past royalties. I personally would add a 4th option, just coming at this from a slightly more nuanced legal perspective. I think too, you could help Mr. Foster disentangle this complex 40-year-old web of who owns the rights to works and who has the responsibility to be paying him, because maybe that's just a conversation and Mr. Foster's grievances are with Del Rey or somebody else. Let's figure that out and let's help out Alan Dean Foster. So how can you help? Well, I don't know. I want to get in touch with the SFWA and maybe see about running some sort of fundraiser or something like that. I'm super busy and I'm not sure if I'm the best person to do that, but maybe I'll look into it. Also, make a stink about it on social media. Get informed, but make a stink. There are a couple of hashtags, and before I recorded this video, hashtag Disney must pay was on my personalized trending tab with over 10,000 uses of the hashtag. You can also use hashtag Dear Mickey, which refers to how Mr. Foster started off his letter to Disney. Again, links to everything down in the description. Let's support somebody who's obviously going through some tough stuff when it comes to his health and the health of his wife. Honestly, the man has put in a lot of work. He's been a fundamental part of the early Star Wars universe. Like, the novelization came out before Episode 4. That's something that people don't often talk about. The novelization helped drum up interest in the movie and was a hit in its own right. So let's make this right. Let's put pressure on Disney to help Alan out here, and not just help him out as charity as we talked about, but pay the man what he's owed. Until next time though, guys, this has been Eckhart's Ladder. Be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.